late. Has anyone seen Manning recently? No. Blimey. Well, we'll have to go on without us.
Oh, dear.
By the way, I must welcome you, ladies and gentlemen, to the Nut Hutch. As you can see, we are in Whole Wheel. We are in South Wales. Stewart is shaking.
No, it's the bottle that's shaking.
We're hoping to have a reunion between Mr. and Mrs. Jones, but it's clearly not going to happen because she's so late. So, Stewart, shall we talk about the Green Death?
Aye, you can.
What the hell accent was that?
I just picked it up from that woman who was here before. I don't know.
I've never heard her before.
Where'd she go?
Well, she obviously isn't making a queue over there at the moment, that's for sure.
Okay. What do you want to ask? Come on, lad.
Oh, well, tell us about the origins of the Nut Hutch.
The Nut Hutch, well, I suppose it was a kind of hippie commune, really, in South Wales.
Yeah, your hair seems a bit shorter nowadays. Mind you, you've got a lot more than me, so I can't talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, well, I think the long hair does, as you kind of progress through life, your hair kind of progresses and gets rather shorter.
That's suggesting that I'm a lot older than you.
Yeah, well, you probably are.
So why were you fighting Global Chemicals? I bet you haven't watched this show for years, have you? You should do your research, man.
Well, you should really, but let's try and explain. Global Chemicals were putting the waste from their oil manufacturing processes, from whatever it was that they produced, and they thought it was a good idea to shove it down coal mines to get rid of it. And what happened was that it affected the DNA of the creatures that were down in the mine already, i.e. maggots, because I don't know quite why there were maggots there, but perhaps somebody dropped a few apples.
I was going to say, which came first, the maggot or the fly?
Ah, well, that's a good question. They have proved that the chicken came before the egg.
Have they?
Yes.
How?
That's a good question, which I can't answer.
I keep asking good questions and you can't answer them.
No, I can't.
And so why did they turn green, Stewart? Prof Jones?
Well, I suspect that somebody thought, what would be a good title for this? The Black Death had already been done.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
So, and
you couldn't call it the Red Death because it would suggest blood, wouldn't it?
That's right, the Red Death. Well, you had the Red Death before with the Mask of the Red Death.
Oh, that was a Hammer movie, wasn't it?
It was Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, yes, it was. Yes, indeed.
And so they couldn't have black, they couldn't have red.
How about the Pink Death? That would have been good fun.
Yeah. And the idea, I think, of green too, was that you couldn't say blue because you had blue.
CSO was blue in those days. Yeah.
It wasn't as easy to come up with a title, but I think the Green Death worked rather well, and it sticks in people's heads, the Green Death.
On this very platform a year ago, when we had John Colshaw, he was impersonating Terence Dix before Terence surprised him and came on, and he was going, "Oh, green monsters must always be green." Oh, yes.
Well, it was, and so you had this bunch of people who were eco-warriors who lived together in this commune and decided to do something about it. And the character that I played had won a Nobel Prize, the youngest Nobel Prize winner apparently ever. So,
do you know who the first person to win 2 Nobel Prizes was, by the way?
No, I don't know.
Oh, it was Marie Curie. She won one for physics. Marie Curie. She won one for physics and one for chemistry. 1903, really? 1911. I only know that because I ran a quiz last week, and that was one of the questions.
And then she died of
radiation
poisoning. Yes, yes, exactly.
Anyone got any questions before we finish the show?
I didn't realise we'd started.
Oh!
Stewart,
yes.
Like 7.
I was, yes.
Yes.
Yes. I was in Blake 7 for one episode of Blake 7, and I played a character called Max, I believe, who was some kind of ambassador for some planet or other, and I can remember very little about it, to be honest. But I remember that they did say, don't touch the set, whatever you do, because it's all a bit wobbly and a little bit shaky. And I had the clunkiest pair of boots on that I'd ever had, and it was actually quite fun to do. It was very quick. You had to get in there and do it and then get out, and it was it was good fun. And I think at one point there was something as Blake 7 and Doctor Who, and it was called the Who 7. There used to be an organisation called the Who 7.
We're all looking completely blank. Nothing
was
new
for
there.
people who'd been in both,
Oh.
in Blake 7 and in Doctor Who. That was Blake 7. It was a very long time ago, you have to understand. I've seen some pictures of myself in it now, and I didn't recognise who it was. It wasn't the bloke that I looked at this morning when I shaved in the mirror, I can tell you.
That wasn't a very good shave either, because you cut yourself.
I did actually, yes. I had to do it one day.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
The one day that you'd really want to, kind of look sharp and smart. And here I am with blood streaming down my face. But no, I'm fine now. I'm fine.
That's good to know. I said to you last night that I recently saw you in the feature film, shall I say, Steptoe and Son Ride Again, as a vet.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I have to laugh, yes.
Wilfred Bramble and Harry H. Corbett.
H. Corbett, yes. They were a grandpair. And it happened very early in the morning, as these things tend to do. And if you stood next to Harry H. Corbett, you just nearly knocked you over, the reek of the brandy that he was swilling from in his pocket. And if you went near Wilfred Bramble, you just got a whiff of gin. So there's brandy and gin coming at you from all sides.
And then there was the smell of the horse as well.
Yes, there was that too. I felt very sorry for the horse, actually. He was getting quite a hard time. But yeah, it was good fun. I mean, you were there, and bang, you
I wasn't there, Stuart,
No, you weren't there, but I was. And you do your bit, and boof, off you go. And
There you are.
Yeah.
Right, I am going to believe in miracles
No.
and say, Katy Manning, come on down.
Eh?
Oh, dear me. The trouble is, this is probably real.
Thank you very much. Good timing. Oh, my dear.
It's very dark in there.
Isn't it?
And I couldn't see the handle.
And it's so tiny, I know, girl.
Oh,
I haven't seen you for years.
oh, it's lovely. Oh, I missed you, my
Come and
love.
sit down there, look.
I'm going to sit down by here.
By here.
By here.
Don't fall
You
off.
sit by there, I'll sit by here.
Don't fall off the stage.
How do you
whatever
do? Lovely to meet you. Huh? Whose hand up where?
She's off. All right.
Right,
Right.
here we go.
Is
What,
it-
what is this you've got? Coconut water and tea.
It's naked. Coconut water.
Does it go next to a Dalek?
Ah. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, isn't he witty?
He's
my
witty, isn't he?
end?
Yeah, he's
well,
clever, isn't he? You got to watch yourself with him, I tell you.
I'm such a wag, aren't I?
You are a wag, lovey. Yes.
Can I take the jacket off?
No, thank you. I'll keep my clothes on.
So it's lovely to have Mr. and Mrs. Jones together in the Nut Hutch for one night only. In fact, for about 40
Well-
minutes only. Can we,
Probably just as well, isn't
now,
it?
Probably.
let's get this out of the way. Let's have your proper Welsh accent, Professor Jones. Proper,
Oh, proper.
yeah.
Oh, right, there you are. Oh, okay. That's it now.
That's
proper
lovely.
Proper Welsh now.
And now, Ms. Manning, please do your impersonation of Talfrin Thomas.
Oh, Joe. Listen, Joe, I got green coming out of my ears. I just have, you know, Tim Treloar. He's Welsh, right? He's now currently playing John Pertwee on audio.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he's absolutely brilliant. And as the series goes on, you know, we really get on very well. Anyway, he's actually Welsh. And I'm ever so naughty because he's there getting his John. Oh, Joe, yes, Joe. And, you know, hands go on the hips because I've taught him everything he knows. And I stay in the studio the whole time with him and, you know, so that we're really... Anyway, but every now and again I can't help myself. And he says, Joe, right, and he's ready to go. And I go, oh, good luck, that's lovely. And he go, oh, God. Nick Briggs says, Katy.
No, Welsh is a very funny accent, Welsh.
It is, but if you can say years and yearins,
years,
and if you know what daps are.
I've been here for years, yes.
You know what daps are? I mean, most people don't know what
Put
daps
a daps on now, we're
Put
going
your
into
daps,
the
that's
gymnasium.
right, that's right. Or if you're going down to the beach, you better get your daps on because
Get
there's
your daps on.
pebbles.
That's
Has
right.
that got anything to do with someone having a nice pair of daps?
I think you got the spelling slightly wrong.
That's all I needed to do, really, wasn't it?
Yes, you were saying that you had an interesting time when we did the old Hug Katy last year, weren't you?
Oh, I have to tell you, if ever there was a time when a woman... There's a gorgeous little boy there. Darling, you must ignore Katy. And if Katy says anything naughty, right, you go like that. All right? You know, you say, so show me how you're going to do it. So if I go and say, that's it, you've got it perfect. Aren't you gorgeous? Can I have a little hug? So I'll try to be a good... There was a time when a woman needed a padded bra.
What, you mean just now or last year?
You go like that, you gotta go like that. The word bra.
He's a lovely boy. Oh, yes. Give him a round of applause. You see, now I'm stuck
But
with
yes,
this Welsh accent now.
I know, I'm going with you,
I
lovely.
can't stop it.
And yes, it was one of those things. I think we got about 70 hugs or something in 3 minutes. Except I kept seeing the same face come back. There was one bloke who just kept joining the queue again. But in the end, it was like wrestling, wasn't it? It was just slam, bang, slam.
Their hands were going higher as they went going more. Maybe their arms were getting tired.
Something like I don't know what was. I was knackered afterwards.
So the Green Death is my favourite Pertwee story. I've I know the demons everyone loves, but the Green Death is so perfect because it was so far ahead of its time.
I like it better than... I mean, I know the Demons is the one that goes, but I have a couple... John and I had a lot of favourites above the... what was it? Demons. But
The demons spelt rather strangely.
Yeah, Damons.
The Damians.
Yeah.
But it was a great story, and it was a fabulous way for Joe to leave. And I love the way that Joe's entrance into Doctor Who as a very young, inexperienced girl who, you know, they sort of mentioned unit, but of course all Joe could do was escapology and not that very well. And, you know, all that thing about her exams, and she said, oh yes, I took it, and then finally said, well, I never said I passed. And I think within episode 1, you kind of knew who Joe was. She was gutsy because she went in there and she winged it. And I think the fact that she ruined the Doctor's experiment on day 1 was totally not wanted by him. And, you know, it was just an irritation to him for the first 24 hours soon, you know. And the fact that they mirrored that with our thing, because you found me irritating, probably still do. Too many years. And, you know, it was quite a lovely way of going full circle. And yet the emotion and the silence, as you would remember. The only person that was happy that day was him. He was walking around, grinning away, while everybody else is like sobbing, can't speak.
Yeah. But I think the idea that Joe was, I remember doing something where somebody said to me, oh, she wasn't the brightest button in the box. I thought, well, yeah, you might think that, but on the other hand, why would a man who is 1,000 years old...
2,000.
Sorry. He's aged a bit since the last time.
Haven't we all?
I didn't realise Professor Jones was that old.
If he was as smart as he is, why would he pick somebody to be his assistant who isn't quite as smart as he is? So I never, and I said, no, that you've got it wrong. It's not that she's not the brightest button in the box. She's actually a very bright button in the box. So he wouldn't travel around with somebody who was going to trip him up and interfere with what he was doing.
No, he would have just thrown me to the Daleks,
Yeah,
wouldn't
absolutely.
he? I mean,
Said,
he had every
okay,
opportunity.
Thank you, you can go next.
That's a bit like being hung by the Cherokees, isn't it?
But I always think, when you talk about smart isn't necessarily about, coming in with great knowledge and so on. What it was somebody, what smart is bright enough to learn. That's
Yes.
what that is.
Yes,
and
indeed.
she was bright enough to learn and kept learning. And as you say, the professor wouldn't have fallen for her. And her determination to constantly, I'm doing this to help. I want to get, and she was also and she offered her life for the doctors. Now, I don't think that says anything but a very strong, very dedicated, very loyal woman.
Absolutely, and there must have been something about Joe Grant that the doctor really needed and really wanted. It was there was a relationship there that he couldn't get with anybody else because it was quite serious business that he was involved in. So he didn't want some dumb,
You mean the real Katy Manning?
Katy, yes, I didn't like to say that.
But the lovely thing was, as I say, was that lovely full circle, and the moment when you knew that Jo had come to the conclusion. I do think Jo was a very strong woman, actually. I think she was a terrifically strong woman. And you get that when she'd had a few little, or more or less, relationships along the way. I mean, she could have been the Princess of Peladon, and, then there was another one in a jungle somewhere. I can't remember. There was so many, darling.
Oh, that was Planet of the Daleks,
there
wasn't
you
it?
go.
Yeah.
And then, to have this wonderful character come in. And what was great was that Russell T Davies, when he continued the character, you saw what an extraordinary and strong woman again she was. She'd stayed loyal to her husband. They had 7 children, so they obviously had a lot of fun. Put your hands over your ears quickly. And, they had all these grandchildren. And they were there. She chained herself to Robert Mugabe. They went... and
What?
Yeah. Didn't you hear that bit?
That?
That's one of the things that she
in
did.
all the Sunday papers. She chained herself.
She did.
To
She
Robert
chained herself to
Mugabe.
Robert Mugabe.
Yeah.
And she...
I must have missed that bit.
No, you probably
And then
did.
she went down the Yangtze in a tea chest. I mean, the woman was busy. And dropping babies. I mean, come on. I know, having just twins and you having 2 children, let alone 7, and doing stuff like that. And then, the lovely thing was he's there with saving forests. You're on oil rigs in a couple of the stories where I'm talking about my wonderful, beautiful husband, Cliff.
Yes, on oil rigs.
Yes, you were on an oil rig at that time,
Oh, dear.
changing, doing
I missed
something.
that one. Oh.
So, generally, I think it's a lovely storyline. I think it went right through beautifully. And the fact that he was, to Jo, a younger version of the Doctor. Because the only difference was he was going to look after this planet and
I had longer hair.
discovered, truthfully prettier. But, the other thing was that he discovered this incredible thing that wasn't invented back then, which was called corn.
No, indeed.
And he had a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, I think she went the right way, quite frankly. I think, but she always had the Doctor in her heart, and he knew that.
One thing about the Green Death, and someone said this to me last night, and I agree 100%, it's the first I learnt the word serendipity because of the Green Death.
Yes. Spell it then. Go on.
IT. No, I'm not going to do it. No, but I actually learnt, happy accident and whatever, and obviously that was the ultimate thing you did, wasn't
Three
it?
Little Princes of Serendip, that's where it comes from. It's like a story, and it's the Three Little Princes of Serendip. And they all go off to, I think it's to please their father, the king, or some such thing, And they all work out different ways, and one of them just goes and lets it happen, and by chance he comes back with the goods. It's one of those. And then, strangely enough, how was it about a year later when they called me up to do an arts and crafts program, and they said, we're calling it Serendipity.
Yes.
And trust me, with my eyesight, it was good luck by chance. Oh, you're going to look for semi-precious stones on the beach.
On the beach.
You're working in epoxy resin, and I went to this guy's house. And I went to this guy's house, right? And the whole place was epoxy resin. I thought, close your ears. What would happen if I lit up a cigarette? The temptation was so great.
And the thing about experts is they all have, and I'm not being rude, but they all have a pension for talking like this, and you've got to make the show interesting. So you take your paint and you dip your materials into the tie-dye machine.
And I'm, oh, how exciting, isn't that wonderful? And then one day they gave me the wind-up signal, right? And that was when I was playing, you'll tell this story in a minute, because I was playing...
Well, if he's going to tell it, don't bother telling it.
No, I've got to get to this bit to give him his cue. And because that was when I was playing the 16-year-old mass murderous girl guide. And
Oh, yes, that's right.
So
Yes, I remember.
one day in the studio, because I had to get up to Edinburgh to the festival, right? And I was and they gave me, I thought, the wind-up signal, but of course I can't see. And I normally can hear the air move, and I know which way it's moving, truly. And I learnt that many years ago. No, you do. When you can't see, you hear things, so I can hear air being cut with cues and things like that. So I thought I was hearing swirling wind, but in actual fact, they were giving me stretching wind. Doesn't sound right somehow, does it?
What sort of... oh, God.
Anyway, and so suddenly this man crawls across the floor and grabs hold of my ankle, which means, taps me on the... Oh, and so I just said, well, thank you so much for joining us in Serendipity, and then I felt pulling on the ankle. I went, so... Anyway, back to, and I had to sort of backpedal back into Serendipity again. It was really quite complex.
I have no idea where this is going to give Stewart a cue.
I'll tell you.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Honey, come on, I'm going to give you a... And so one day, Stewart was going to meet me at the airport when I got there and tell them how I arrived. It wouldn't go
You can't remember by the looks of it. At the airport, you probably arrived by plane, was it? Oh.
The girl guide.
Why are you telling him the story? Why
I
don't you...
can't tell him that story. I can't.
Oh, no, maybe not.
I just heard the words girl and guides underneath Katy's breath.
And pigtails.
Well, that was about 3 minutes of our lives that we'll never get back, Katy. Thank you. Can I throw this open to the audience for questions?
I would very quickly. It's been a long day.
Yes, that's John.
Hi guys, how reflective of your own views on the environment was Green Death? And if you could pass one law to make the world a better place, what would that law be?
Oh gosh. Well, I think the environmental problems that we have with fossil fuels is undoubtedly one of the most serious problems that the world has. And if you consider that they were starting to talk about this 50 years ago and still we're in the same position, I think you'll find that that is an extremely serious state that the world is in. I mean, we're still fighting wars over oil, we're still putting oil in our cars, and petrol and fumes.
And complaining about the world.
And indeed.
That's the hard bit, isn't it? That we all stand there saying, oh, plastics, which are killing all our sea life. It's in so many things now that we didn't know it was in.
This is actually very unusual. I was quite surprised to come here and find that these bottles are actually glass, because normally they'd all be plastic. And wherever you go, there's plastic. You can't escape it. And if you're concerned that plastic... I mean, who came up with the idea many years ago? I think the man who invented Bakelite in 1890s decided that it was a wonderful invention because you could never destroy it. They must have thought, wow, what a wonderful idea.
But it's
This
like
stuff
everything
is-
now. We're making it to last, and we all thought that was such a fabulous
Absolutely.
idea, didn't we? And of course now, where are we putting all our trash? And we know that there's a man on the floor. Oh no, it's your foot.
Oh.
I was going to say, somebody was crawling in to say, your time's up.
Your time's up.
But yes.
Moving on.
But you know, this is the thing. We all bang on about what's wrong with the world. Everybody's up there on the internet, and they're all going, "Oh, isn't this terrible? Isn't this terrible?" We're all using stuff. We're all the time, and yet we're complaining about the fact that it's there. You know, this is the problem, that we've all got to literally, you know, it's like complaining about what you read in the newspapers. Then don't buy them. And if you don't buy them, then the newspapers won't be out there. And we really do have to start getting very serious about making a commitment, and not just talking about the commitment, but actually making a commitment. And also, about time we stopped all this war nonsense.
Yes,
I'm
well
fed
said.
up with it.
Well said. Well said. Good job.
Don't get me started.
Don't get us started.
Let's move on to the next
And
question.
you know, Stuart and I together get very. And by the way, Barry Letts was very, very keen to do that story. Just to throw this in, as I think it was part of your question, is that we were already working and caring about the planet deeply at that point. And Barry Letts was one of the most incredible producers you could have had on a show like Doctor Who. There have been more since. But he was the first to really start looking at how we could start looking at some of these situations. We looked at war during that. There were all sorts of different situations looked at during his time. And it was very important to all of us. So
Well,
it makes you ask yourself what he had for lunch, doesn't it?
I don't know whether it frightened you, but it certainly frightened me.
It frightened him.
Where were we?
Well, we were getting serious. We seem to have...
You obviously got really bored with the fact that, oh, I'm fed up with this, I'm just going to get a maggot
It just so
out.
happened I had a maggot between my legs, yeah. A giant one.
Close your ears.
Next question, please. Yes, Alan.
I was watching Frontier in Space last week, and
That was nice.
Very nice. There's lovely for you.
He's
no,
not
he's from
Welsh.
No, he's from the other part.
Oh, is
he
it?
was
Oh,
watching
it's-
Frontier in Space.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, he can't hear very well.
should I start again?
Now start again, my dear.
Where's the roving mic?
My
start-
lovely.
you
No,
start
my
again.
lovely, we can hear you.
Project, man. Project. Like...
I was watching Frontier in Space last week, and a line stood out, and I thought, that's very Katy Manning. The line was, I think he enjoyed his banana.
You should be up here. We'll get another chair.
Scripted for you.
I confess it was an ad lib. And John said, you'll never get away with it. I said, watch me.
Oh, dear.
Next question, please. Oh, you come next. Yeah.
When Russell T Davies rebooted the show, he had as his heroine a naive ingenue who became, by the time she left, a strong, confident woman who was hot and blonde.
Annika Wills. No, who?
Whether he took any inspiration from earlier Doctor Who companions?
Did he work, Lily?
Right. Rose came in as a bit of a plonker. Went out very strong, blonde. Do you think he
There
took anyone
was-
as an
there was
inspiration?
there was a little bit of that being where they wanted to go when they brought me into it, to actually be able to bring children into the show, to be able to bring teenagers into the show, because she, at her era, as I was in my era, was very much a girl of the time. You know, fashion, clothes, groovy, cool, blah blah blah. And yes, there was just that little thing, and also, you know, having that intelligence to want to learn and to grow. Can I did you
Indeed,
tell
yes.
them about, good question, and yes, you're right.
Yeah, very good
Did you
question.
tell them about corn, darling?
I think they know about corn. Yes, about
No, a lot of people don't.
mycoprotein. Well, Robert Sloman, who wrote The Green Death, had read a scientific magazine that was talking about ways of producing meat-like substances that were full of protein and very good for humans to eat, but didn't involve killing cows.
And it wasn't that sort of, you know, that horrible soy that they kept giving us, that gristly stuff that they said was like, it was soya, but ugh, it's disgusting.
So he came up with this mycoprotein, which is made from growing mushrooms. If you buy corn, you can see that it says in the ingredients that that's exactly what it is.
Mushroom.
It's a fungus that grows. There's egg in it. There's other things, but it can actually be turned into anything. I was reading the other day that in fact now they can produce meat in a laboratory. That you can actually
Well, why
grow
don't we
it
just eat
in a laboratory.
vegetables?
So you don't need animals. You just need a little bit of DNA. You can put it in a laboratory, and you can grow it. And no animal needs to be harmed or
And
killed.
there's
No farting. Doesn't
Yeah.
change the atmosphere.
And the fungus that, there's a fungus or a spore, as it were,
That
eats
eats
plastic. It eats entire forests. And then it, you know, that nutrient then goes into the ground. And they found that this, you see, everything on this planet, okay, there is an answer to, if only we could stop interfering, you know, and stop saying, oh, if we bring that beetle over there, that'll kill the fly in another country, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And we just keep on. But there is, if we let it happen, in the same way as if there's a stinging nettle, there's a dock leaf. You know, and it's true. And we can live very happily on this planet with what you're saying. We just need to start looking in that direction. But unfortunately, people keep thinking about money, don't they? They
Yes,
think
exactly. Yes,
it
has to
ruins
be money.
everything.
Yeah.
Did you know that it gets really crowded in a box of corn? There's not much room in there.
Oh, you're a fun guy.
Next question.
What was your reaction when you both got told that your monster for that episode were maggots?
What was your reaction when you
were
got
told that your monsters were going to be maggots?
Nobody told me.
No, they just appeared one day.
You take my glasses off and I don't know what's going on, darling. I mean, you know, no, you don't kind of... I think the most important thing was, to be honest, I think this is kind of interesting, is John didn't know that Stewart, who was my fiancé at that time, he got a lucky escape, didn't he? Who was my fiancé at that time, for real. Nobody told John that he was coming in to play my...
Was it a total coincidence that he got cast, or did you have any influence on it?
No, I didn't even know till he came and told me.
Well,
right,
indeed,
okay.
it was done. It was just purely accidental, really, in a way.
Serendipitous.
It was serendipity, and I kind of resisted the idea at first because I thought, well, once they figure out that Katy and I were together, they'd say, oh, well, this is a bit of nepotism here, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's just-
Nothing.
you're only getting the part because you know her. But it wasn't like that, actually. They one day they said, look, we've tried to cast this character, and we can't find anybody that is right. Would you please, you know, come and see us, and will you read for the part? And so I said, all right, I'll come and see you. I went to meet them, and I read the part, and I'm a Welshman, but.
Good name like Bevan, absolutely.
Absolutely, and with my middle name is Llewellyn, which I couldn't even spell until I was 15. actually. And my mother said, no, listen, it's L-E-W-E-L-L-Y-N. Say it after me. L-E-W-E-L-L-Y-N. Llewellyn. Yes, L-E-W-E-L-L-Y-N. So I knew how to spell my own name eventually.
He did Eliza with the Z song before it was done.
Absolutely. And,
Double up the L.
and I read this part with a Welsh accent, and they looked at me and said, well, hang on, why are you reading it in a Welsh accent? I said, well, he's Welsh, isn't he? I said, well,
Jones?
No, yes, exactly. I said, his name's Jones, and he lives in South Wales. Well, he's Welsh. They went, oh, yeah. So, and then a few days later, they phoned up and said, would you like to do it? And I
But
said,
John wasn't happy.
no.
He wasn't happy. Because if you look at the difficulty there, that we were deeply emotionally, parting after, a very strong relationship on screen and a very strong friendship off screen. And it was sort of kind of interesting. And Barry Letts got that in the end, because what it did, you just saw that tiny tweak of John reacting to the fact that Jo was going off with her professor.
Yeah.
So you added, dramatically another level to it without going into, as they often do in modern days, all the explanation. It was just that little tiny glint of, right.
And there is one scene where Katy and I are in front of the fire talking, and she's looking particularly beautiful, and we're chatting away, and it looks as though we're aiming to have a moment of a kiss, and suddenly the doctor appears in the doorway and says, oh, Professor, can I have a word with you, please?
And we were just
And I go,
literally...
oh, right, okay.
And of course, Jo had
Good night.
a couple of kisses on screen, which back then, once again, was not something you expected or saw in Doctor Who. So there was
There was an element of,
and
an undercurrent of sort of jealousy.
Well, Moffat said it was something that he noticed when he watched, because that was their era. And he said that there was, the first time he'd watched Doctor Who, we thought there was an undercurrent of possibility, although it would never go anywhere. But he said it was just kind of interesting, and he wanted to explore it in his era, which he did.
So, tell me, you're a 2,000-year-old man and you're running around with a 16-year-old girl. It's interesting.
Well, back to the story
That's
you
very
couldn't tell. Of me getting of the truth of that story, I just have to give you the truth of it. I had to get to, from doing the studio in the BBC, doing serendipity. So there I am teaching people how to weave and weed. Yes, well, you just... Anyway.
You know what she means.
Yes, and all these extraordinary things, how to, sculpt and all that kind of thing. And there was very little time, so I got changed on the plane. So his then fiancée arrived at Edinburgh Airport in a mini gym slip, white frilly knickers, white knee socks, pigtails, right, ran up and said, darling, and Stewart's going, oh, I don't know about this.
This looks a bit dodgy.
It doesn't look good.
She's only 5'1" as well. Oh my God. Luckily, I wasn't arrested.
So I was leading to a story that you...
But we got there eventually.
Stuart didn't want to admit that. Am I right in thinking that...
No, never.
Please don't do that.
That in one of the scenes in The Green Death, where it's close up on the maggots and they're having a battle with the unit soldiers, that they had to build a raised stage, and you had crew with the maggots up their arms.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I always thought that the guys who did that, who made the maggots, because in those days special effects had to be made what they call in camera. You had to do it there and then, with the camera just watching what was going on. You didn't have CGI. You didn't have very complicated, very simple computerized ways of doing special
We
effects.
had colour separation overlay.
That was about it.
You
That
look at the
was
camera, you
on
see
the
what's
blue
happening.
screen.
Yeah,
Yes,
if you can see.
And I always thought that the guys who actually had the job of making the maggots and figuring out how they were going to make them, I thought that was the best job in the world. I thought, these guys are 3 guys sitting around in a pub with beer mats and pints of beer going, now listen, we got to get these things and they got to be able to move and we want these mouths to open. So if we get one and they used the
We had
blower.
real maggots at one point, didn't we? We had a whole thing of swimming real maggots.
Real maggots.
Yeah.
And,
That was
and I
yeah,
have
in
to
the scene
say,
at the bottom of the
I have to
ca-
say that Katy was very, very keen that none of those maggots should be harmed.
I'm
She's an
afraid
absolute animal lover, and she said, if you harm one of those maggots, I'm walking out of here.
I did.
So, yeah.
I did the same with the frogs, and the same when we worked with the animals in the circus. And John Pertwee had only just met me, and I'm already threatening to take the tigers home. And he could see then what he was going to be stuck. No, absolutely
Interesting that 47 years later, the final tiger trainer, who is of the Chipperfield family, has been told he is not getting a license to have a tiger.
Oh,
in a
at last.
Quite
circus.
right too.
So
Yes,
it took
absolutely.
47 years.
Absolutely. But isn't it appalling that it took 47 years?
Yes, terrible.
That's so disrespectful.
Yeah, indeed.
You know, don't start me.
Oh, no.
You know, I may have a lot of giggles in, but I'm very, 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 as Stewart knows.
You're very, very, very as Stewart knows.
Yes.
How can you be as Stewart knows?
She had.
Is that one
definitely
word?
knows.
I was going to finish the sentence, but I'm not now. No.
It's always my fault.
Yeah. I love your son, though. But no, I really do feel very strongly about an awful lot of things, especially when it comes to animals and the planet. And Stuart and I both do. So really, I think we are very much the Joneses. You know,
Yes, we are.
we really are. Because we enjoy so many of the same things.
Indeed.
And I am very, very lucky to have had the friendship of this wonderful man in my life for so long. And I will treasure it forever. And I couldn't have wanted to have left that programme with anybody else other than Stewart Bevan playing
Good.
May Jones. I love you, Stewart. Cool.
Could we have
I
another?
get teary.
Could we have another question, please? Sorry, no disrespect, but while someone's doing that question, I have to go under the table because I've got another prop I've lost.
So it was you under the table telling me. I knew somebody was under there. While you... No.
Question, what's going on under there?
While you're under there.
I don't want to tell you. Cover your ears.
Box is empty. Where is it? Oh, here he is. Got it. All right. You're right.
I don't drink.
You should.
I'll tell you a very quick story about...
Sorry about that. The question will be
This
done a
laugh
bit-
I got from the kid was when I fell off the chair. I have to tell you, I went to Big Finish, Jason Hay-Gallery had this massive great party, and it was... Everybody was there. It was absolutely wonderful. And I arrived, and Jason said, "Katy, darling, oh, get out of my way."
That's true, that's true.
I just hate
There'll
these
be another
things.
one in a
I was
minute.
trained. I don't need that. And Jason Hagel said, "Darling, I've got a glass of champagne with your name on it, you see." And I said, "Oh, thank you, Jason, darling. I don't drink." And he went, "Oh." He said, "I'd always use that as an excuse for your behaviour."
Sorry, right.
You do not want to see Katy drunk.
No.
Do not want to
No.
see that.
Question, thank you. Yeah.
She would be on this
No, yeah,
table stark naked.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, well, if there was music playing.
Yeah, only if it was
Right,
music.
right. Question.
Sorry.
Again.
Katy, I just read the biography of Douglas Canfield.
Which I have at
Who
home.
wrote that?
A great read
I've just offered it to Stuart because I've got 2 copies.
about Douglas and Stewart. I watched Brannigan the other night, the John Wayne film.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have a John Wayne anecdote?
Do I have a John Wayne anecdote? Oh,
Douglas
dear.
Canfield.
Oh, dear. Well, you have a Canfield anecdote?
Oh, well, I can talk about Canfield. As you could tell,
absolutely.
we were very close.
He was a
and-
wonderful, extraordinary man.
but he can give you his John Wayne.
Oh well, no, I did a film with John Wayne.
I
called
remember, I was
Brannigan.
there.
And we had he's a lovely guy actually, very very interesting guy. As long as you didn't talk politics, you were fine.
Or religion.
Yeah, or religion. But he was an absolutely wonderful bloke. He struck me as, not literally, as
Hello,
another, just as another very keen, anxious young actor to get it right. And we were constantly saying to each other, should we go over the lines? Should we go over the lines again? Yeah, let's go over the lines. Yeah. And we do this thing, and we had a car chase. And we wrote off 3 cars. And I tell you, if you watch that film, my expression in that film was not acting at all. I was absolutely, well, I won't say what I was doing, but I was quite frightened. And the car was supposed to jump over Tower Bridge as it was opening, and it was done very early on a Sunday morning, and the police were there to stop all the traffic, and the idea was that the stuntman would drive the car up and then stop, and they'd cut to a little model shot of the car going over and then come down the other side. And the stuntman saw his chance and actually drove the car up and literally leapt over the gap in the car onto the other side of the bridge and was immediately arrested. And the producer paid his fine and said, that was great, thank you very much. Lovely, we got it, we can. Yeah.
And Stewart came home so proud of himself because John Wayne had given him a belt buckle.
Oh, yes, he gave me a belt
Yeah.
with
Have you
it
still got
signed and a mug, and I
You've
had
still
a
got the
mug.
belt
I still got
buckle,
it,
yeah.
I still have it,
That's
yeah,
cool.
sure. No, he was a terrific guy, John Wayne, absolutely terrific. I mean, he was obviously getting on a bit, and he was quite ill at the time, and he'd be very cheerful. People would come up to him, he'd be very nice, very cheerful, and then he'd kind of go, oh, like that. I'd say, you all right? Yeah, kid, I'm fine. And we had a lovely time. We ad-libbed our way through it. Really, what they do, they just stick the camera on certain various parts of the car, and then we just drive around. And we wrote off 3 of them. They had 4 identical cars, and 3 of them were no good, shall I say, after he'd driven around a bit. And
They must have known in advance what he was
Mind
like.
you,
I
have you ever
think so,
driven with
yes.
Stewart?
Yes,
No.
yes. But
Is that why he came by train?
Yeah.
but the idea was that we ended up on a skip.
It's like my career.
Yeah, well, quite. And the car
I'm sorry, I had to say that.
and
Joking.
it sat on this skip full of rubbish, but the problem was that he couldn't get out. And I said, John, Duke, I said, look, if I take the hinges off the door, all you got to do is just kick it, and the whole door will fall off. And I said, it'd be quite funny. And he went, hey, son, that's a good idea. Yeah. So and they did this, and he kicked it, and the door fell off, and it was great. Just all worked beautifully. And this was the first week of the shoot of the film, and 12 weeks was the shoot, 3 months. And at the end, they always have a party, a wrap party in a big room. And this was in the ballroom at the Dorchester Hotel. And I was a bit hesitant, really, about going into this party, because I'd only, had a small part in the film, really. But I thought, okay, I better go. I've got an invitation. I'll go. And I just opened the door and looked in. And he was very tall. He was about 6'4", I think. And he was right at the other end of the room, and he saw me, and he went, Stewart! And he pushed his way through all the crowd of people, grabbed hold of me, and gave me this enormous hug. It's good to see you, son. And I was so pleased. So happy. Oh, yeah. Well,
He was positively glowing.
I was glowing. For days I was glowing. It was lovely. No, it was absolutely marvelous. He was a lovely, lovely man. And I don't think that his politics were a great part of.
Well,
him,
we'll
I
let
think.
that
Yeah,
go.
let's move
Let
on.
that go. But no, that was great fun, a great adventure.
Cool.
And one of the nicest things I've ever done, really, I have to say.
Right, we only have time for
I was
one
just
more
going to say
question.
Douglas Canfield.
Oh, sorry, we haven't even answered your one yet.
Well, no. I was going to say that, I won't.
Saturday Night Live starts in just over 2 hours, 5 minutes.
Just very briefly to say, read Douglas, as you saw from the book, that we were. I think it says it all when I never worked with him on Doctor Who. And he wanted to work with me, but he wanted to do other things. And I won't say both the things that we did because there's a little person present. And it was about,
Rude things.
no, it was about ladies who like ladies. And then that back then, that was sort of groundbreaking television. So he cast me in that, and he cast me as a junkie. And I don't know what that says about my portrayal of Joe Grant. I'll leave that with you. But it was very exciting to have somebody like that take me out of what quite often can typecast you and put me into two such extraordinary groundbreaking roles, whilst, of course, I was helping people make epoxy resin things and,
And looking for precious
and looking-
stones on the beach.
Was I typecast? No.
Right, the final question from the young lady there.
If Joe was able to meet Jodie Whittaker as Doctor, what would be your reaction to the new Doctor's look?
I think I heard a bit of it.
If Joe were to meet Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor,
Bon.
as a female Doctor, what would be Joe's reaction?
Oh, she'd just give her, like...
Give her one.
she'd give,
Obvious pause then, dear.
Joe, when she met Osgood, when she met Kate, just called them darling and hugged them all the time. Joe is of that nature, and she would do exactly the same with Jodie. She's like a kind of mothery, earthy woman. And that's the great thing when you hear those CDs, those audios, where Joe meets Osgood, and it's all sweetie, darling, and, you need... And she says to Kate, she says, what does it? She says to Kate, oh, darling, you army people need a lot more hugs. That's the problem. That is Joe. And I think, she's a very strong, happy woman. She's a non-aggressive. I remember Sophie, Audra and I said, if there were two characters, Sophie would be there with her baseball bat beating them to death, and Joe would be hugging them to death, And I think that's Joe's character, and I think you saw that even when she first started. Joe was a lover. She was a
carer.
carer, nurturer.
She cared.
I have a small gift. Just before
Is that what you went under that bloody table for?
Stuart takes you up the Amazon. Oh. What? Something for you to treasure and look after.
Oh.
Take it with you. It'll bring you good luck.
And you want it back? And you want it back next year?
Well, about 3 minutes' time, actually.
Yeah.
You have to push that for the light to come on.
Oh,
I see.
look at
isn't
that.
Marvellous? Isn't that lovely? Thank you.
Barnfather, you should have that shot.
Right, just before we close, I have a couple of quick announcements to make.
I think I would have that as a piercing.
Where would you pierce, Ms. Manning?
My nose.
Your doze?
I don't...
Right, couple of quick announcements. A reminder that Saturday Night Live at the Capitol 3 gets underway at 8:15. Apart from some great entertainment, there are also some stunning and unique items available in the auction. So do please... Do you want to read it for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't got glasses? So do please come prepared. And remember, never lose it for a bid.
I'm going to help with the auction, right?
Help, is that the correct word?
Help.
Will Stewart be
Help.
helping you help?
I hope so. I think we should...
I'll be her little helper.
And,
helper.
yes, I think we're going to come and help for a little bit before I have to get on my train. And adding something to your auction as well that you might all enjoy that involves a little Sean Pertwee.
Okay.
You didn't know about that, you see. Not everything, do you?
Don't know everything, you see.
No.
Don't know it all.
See, you just
No,
don't
no,
know.
no.
You think you're
That's
running
right.
it, but you're not.
Right.
I might not know, but at least I can read what's on here. And it's in Tahoma 14.
Meow.
He's mocking the afflicted.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes,
given that you're
very.
talking with the hair in your mouth, I think that's probably right. Right. Secondly,
I knew I should have got waxed. No.
that's what you call a Sean Pertwee, isn't it?
Oh!
Secondly, and on behalf of the Society, I am delighted to announce that the Capital 4 will take place at this very venue on the weekend of the 27th and 28th of April next year. As a thank you to everyone attending this year, we have a very special early bird offer available.
Oh. I'm an early bird.
No, you're quite a late bird, actually. I just have to warn you that we might have to invite someone back for the 4th consecutive year. We haven't invited her yet, don't get carried away, but
Stewart.
weekend tickets priced at just £79 for Society members and £89 for non-members are on sale for the next 24 hours until the event
Can you use
closes.
the seniors pass? Because it gets you into the museums. You can go to the cinema
Yeah.
on a Thursday,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you
and,
get
and a third
and
off.
you get a free
Third-
cup of tea.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just sharing that with you because I don't want to think that anybody who has the seniors card isn't going to get duped.
Weekend tickets priced at just £79 for Society members, £89 for non-members, and £199 for the person on my left are on sale for the next 24 hours. Full details can be found at the DWAS stall out there. Thank you. And tomorrow night, before we close, I will be announcing the first confirmed guest. Thank you very much. Enjoy your dinner. And thank you to these two wonderful people, Mr. and Mrs. Jones.